Acknowledging Fiona and Kelly for having us here at FareShare today. Of course, the Chief Health Officer, Di Farmer, who's the local MP in this area, and of course also Minister under the Palaszczuk government. What I might do this morning is give a quick COVID update, hand over to the Chief Health Officer, and then talk about our recycling announcement today around how we want to get Queenslanders to help us with our war on waste. So today, in terms of COVID numbers, we have 4,919 new cases. We've had 2,791 positive blood tests. In terms of testing over the last 24 hours, we've had 9,901 samples tested. Sadly, it's my duty today to report that 10 people have tragically lost their lives, and we of course extend our thoughts to those families. In terms of COVID care in hospitals, there are 391 patients in public hospitals, including 31 in the ICU, 23 patients in private hospitals, including 5 in the ICU. Vaccine coverage across Queensland for people aged 16 and over is 92.48% of Queenslanders with at least one dose, and 90.53% of Queenslanders who are fully vaccinated. For 5 to 11-year-olds, we have 41.81% of eligible children with one dose. And for boosters, we have 62.93% of the eligible population having received a booster, which is fantastic. I'll hand over now to the Chief Health Officer.
Thank you very much, Minister. Sadly, we have 10 deaths to report today. 1 person in their 50s, 1 in their 60s, 2 in their 70s, 5 in their 80s and 1 in their 90s. Of these, 2 were not vaccinated, 1 person had 1 dose of vaccine, and 4 had received 2 doses of vaccine and 3 had received a booster. And 4 of these deaths were among aged care residents. Our thoughts again without their families. In terms of hospitalisations, things remain stable. We now have 391 people in public hospitals. It's around the same as yesterday when we reported 384. That includes 31 people in intensive care units. Was 33 yesterday. That's their public hospitals I'm talking about. In the private hospitals, we have 23 patients in private hospitals, down by 1 from yesterday when it was 24. Among school-aged children, very stable. We're reporting 1,507 cases of COVID-19 among school-aged children between the ages of 5 and 17 in the last 24 hours. It's down a bit from yesterday when we reported 1,702. I wouldn't read a great deal into daily fluctuations, but the main thing is there's clearly no major substantial increase in cases since schools opened last Monday. And in terms of hospitalisations of school-aged children, there's been no increase in hospitalisations of school-aged children that we have detected so far. So far so good in that respect. I think in general, the general picture is one of stabilisation. What we're seeing in New South Wales and Victoria is that cases have slowly decreased and reached a plateau, and we are likely to reach a plateau of cases in the next few days or weeks. The important message here is that even though the peak is over, we are expecting a continued transmission going forward. The virus is not going to go away. We don't expect it to. But in terms of the impact on hospitals, etc., that's certainly coming well under control. I'll now hand back to... Yes. Yes.
What we're seeing is Victoria and the ACT with their restrictions starting to ease and still coming yesterday.
Yep.
Is that a bit of an indication of what Queensland should expect to see ease in the coming weeks?
Well, as we've mentioned before, we're about 2 weeks behind New South Wales and Victoria, and we're going to be talking about this publicly in the coming weeks. We're having the discussion about this, and we'll be talking further about that. And I don't want to say anything more about changes in restrictions before next week. It will not impact. The plan is that our plans are going ahead. So we're moving forward, not backwards. So this is as good as we would have expected. The number of hospitalisations we have had is far fewer than we expected. Intensive care admissions far fewer than we expected. So we are moving forward with our plans.
Should there be another variant pop up when it comes in, as you say, is it always about moving forward, not backwards?
Oh, look, I think that's speculative. What we do know is that immunity to COVID-19 is developing strongly in Queenslanders, both through vaccination, boosters, and also natural transmission. Most of the people who are acquiring COVID-19 at the moment in Queensland most of them are vaccinated and have very mild symptoms. They have very mild symptoms. But that combination of mild infection with vaccination gives a particularly strong immunity against the virus. And so that immunity in the Queensland community is building steadily every day.
With cases likely to plateau soon, do you think masks are still a necessary protection for Queensland?
Again, we'll be talking about that when we discuss the changes in the coming week or so. Well, I hope so. I hope there are some people that are saying that they've wanted a more sort of conventional vaccine, a protein-based vaccine, before rather than receiving the vaccines that we know are very safe and effective. But if that's what people wanted, now we have that additional vaccine that's available. So we have an array of very safe and effective vaccines that people can use.
Related to COVID? No. Shall we do our next announcement and then we do general questions at the end? Okay, that sounds good. Excellent. Well, as I said, great to be here today at FareShare. This is a fantastic not-for-profit organisation that is rescuing good food and providing valuable, healthy meals for Queenslanders who are doing it tough. They are one of 6 organisations across Queensland that have received one of the Palaszczuk government's food rescue grants. This particular organisation has used that money to purchase a new forklift, they're building a new second cool room, and they're also using the money to employ an additional staff member. This is really about making sure they can continue to scale up capacity to divert more food from landfill and help even more vulnerable Queenslanders. What we know is that around half of your red top bin, so your general waste bin, is made up of food waste that is unfortunately going to landfill each year. We want that to change. We want that to change because it's bad for our environment, it's creating harmful methane emissions, and it's also costing Queenslanders. Queensland households spend around $2,200 every year on food that actually just goes in the bin. And so we want to encourage more incentives for Queenslanders to try and divert that waste away from landfill and encourage better habits. So today I'm really pleased to be launching our 3-week challenge as part of our Love Food Hate Waste campaign. This is a challenge that encourages households to put in place measures that will reduce the amount of waste that they're putting into the bin every day. And as part of a way to incentivise people, we're giving away 10 NutriBullets. So I encourage as many Queenslanders as possible, hop onto the website. We'll be launching this at the beginning of next month. And this is a way that you can help us with our war on waste. I'm also really pleased today to be launching our 10-year organics plan and strategy. And I want to acknowledge all of the stakeholders who have informed this process. We've had people from the environment sector, people from the waste sector, who have all been a part of helping Queensland shape our blueprint around how we're going to reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill and create more jobs in more industries. Of course, we've also announced at the end of last year $1.1 billion in our Recycling and Jobs Fund. We're rolling out systems across the state. We have the grant that I've just talked about today at FareShare, but we also have other grants. We're helping state schools put in place measures where they can help school kids stop the amount of food waste that's going into the bin, and again, encourage them to put in place with things like composting. We also have a $11 million grant opportunity for businesses to roll out more infrastructure to help us deliver FOGO. We are doing a range of measures across the state because we know that this is not only good for our environment, but it creates jobs as well. I might hand over now to Minister Farmer and then take questions if that works.
Good morning. I'm very proud to have an organisation like FareShare in my local electorate. It is the biggest charity kitchen in the Southern Hemisphere, and it literally takes thousands of kilograms of food every single week that's not quite fit for market anymore and converts them into nutritious meals to feed some of the most vulnerable people in our community. It's a terrible thing that there are people going hungry in Queensland every single day. It's even more terrible to know that we are wasting thousands of kilograms of food a week when those same people are going hungry, which is why this strategy is just so important. We're all probably guilty, everyone in this room, of throwing out quite a lot of food every week that we mean to use and we just never get to it. And then there's that terrible ugly heap at the bottom of your crisper. And I think this strategy will help in so many ways. It helps us as individuals to have that conversation and to get ourselves into good habits about using food and not wasting it. It helps us to understand some of those regular services that are available, like how to use our waste recycling bins. It helps small businesses implement new practices. It helps organisations like this really channel that food from being wasted into something for good. So I really welcome this. Everyone, I hope everyone gets on board with this little competition, and I think it will teach us all a whole lot of things.
Sorry, just to quickly add, this plan lays out really short to long-term measures. So, for example, by 2025, we want 65% of households in the levy zone in Queensland to have access to these organic services. So this will be a plan going forward that helps council, state government and federal government roll out the infrastructure we need to help Queenslanders reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill. Any questions? Yeah, so we have invested. We're currently doing 3 trials at the moment. As you would know, in Queensland, we had a waste levy. It was repealed by the Meaghan government. We had to bring it back. And what I did at the end of last year was announce the largest single investment in recycling in Queensland's history. So Queenslanders will see a whole range of these services being rolled out across the state. But as I said, it needs to be done in partnership with councils and the Commonwealth. And we need to make sure we do it right. One of the pieces of feedback we got from industry particularly was that they don't want to see a sort of scattergun approach. They want to see a really strategic rollout of these services that gives confidence to households, it gives confidence to councils, and it gives confidence to industry.
What's wrong with integrity announced yesterday? Integrity probe announced yesterday.
Yeah.
Are you really concerned Queensland proceeding through the inquiry as a sham?
Look, I think this is a good step going forward that we have this inquiry. Of course, there are many processes in Queensland where people can put forward their complaints. In fact, Queensland has some of the strongest measures of any state in the country. It's one of the reasons I joined the Labor Party, was because we were the party who put in place things like real-time disclosure. We put in place a cap on the amount of donations in terms of the amounts. We also prohibited property developer donations. So, I think our track record is pretty clear.
In terms of the inquiry itself, it won't be able to call witnesses, it won't properly protect witnesses, and it won't deal with individual complaints. Is this not a case of the government cracking the lid and not quite lifting it?
Well, look, there are a whole range of mechanisms in which people can make complaints under the Public Interest Disclosure Act. People can, of course, make complaints, and we encourage people to do so if there is evidence that they wish to put forward. And there are also protections in place. So this is about, as the Premier said yesterday, about looking at culture and a whole range of things. So we have a whole lot of systems in place to be able to deal with people being able to come forward and provide really valuable information to make sure that our public service is doing exactly what it should be doing, serving the interests of Queenslanders. I understand the Premier commented on this yesterday, but in terms of former public servants, of course, if they have any particular measures or allegations, they can put them forward through current processes. So there are frameworks in place where anyone can provide that information.
Minister, if you went down to the Parliament or local electorate and you asked Queensland what they thought of this inquiry, what do you think their honest response would be?
I did a mobile office only last week, and I can tell you the thing that people are raising is they're concerned about the federal government's handling of aged care. There was not a single person who raised this with me. What they were concerned about was the fact the federal government hasn't put in place a federal ICAC. So, I think the things that we're hearing from Queenslanders is they want governments who are going to do things in their interests. That is what we do every day. Of course, there are proper processes in place. We're doing these reviews to make sure that the public can have absolute confidence in the measures that Queensland has, and I think that's entirely appropriate.
Is it appropriate that Public Service Commissioner Rob Settler has been reappointed to a $600,000 a year job with investigating his agency's role in a grey in the Integrity Commission's office?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. Is it appropriate that Rob Settler, who's the Public Service Commissioner, reappointed to a $600,000 a
I understand a public statement was made by him, and all of those matters are obviously a part of the proper process. So any concerns, people should put them forward, but my understanding is that there are no reasons to suggest that that is an inappropriate process.
What do you think Queenslanders can expect out of this review? What do you think the review will find?
Look, I don't want to preempt what the review will find. I think that's the whole point of conducting a review, so that there can be, full and frank advice provided by public servants, by everyone, to make sure that our systems are robust. That's why we've put in place the review, and I certainly look forward to seeing the recommendations. As the Premier said, it'll be released in full, and the government will support those.
Would it be a worry for the government if Professor Koala wanted to look further?
Look, ultimately, we've launched the terms of reference for that particular review. We'll always hear feedback from Queenslanders around what they want to see, but I have absolute confidence in Professor Coldrake. He's well respected by many people across this country, and I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job. Sorry, can you just repeat the first part of that question?
So you were talking about the benefits that this will have in terms of temporary government.
Yep.
But the government said prior stated there was no need for this review. So what kind of conversations did you have with the Premier about the need or not need for this review?
I don't entirely agree with the characterisation of the question, but as the Premier said yesterday, we've listened to Queenslanders. We've put in place this review to make sure people can have confidence. As we've said previously, though, in regards to individual matters, there are currently investigations and matters on foot or have been already investigated that should provide confidence to people that there are robust systems in place. So this was about providing that additional layer of confidence. The Premier has said she's listened and we're acting.
Do you think the government should announce the integrity probe further?
Look, as I said, the Premier said that she's been listening to Queenslanders. We've acted. I think in terms of individual complaints, they need to be dealt with appropriately. This is a review the Premier has announced. I think that's entirely appropriate, that we look at the evidence and we look at what systems are currently underway and what needs to be improved upon. I think, we're doing the right thing going forward.
Would you agree it took too long?
No, look, I think at every stage we've been handling a global pandemic. We've been trying to make sure that our economy kicks along, which is doing fantastic things. We've followed proper processes, and to give Queenslanders confidence, we've made this announcement. I think that's entirely appropriate. Sorry, what was that? Oh, look, I'm not going to disclose what we discuss at each cabinet meeting for obvious reasons, but of course the Premier made this announcement, and I think it's entirely appropriate. Oh, look, I disagree. I think at every stage our government has been focused on making sure we deliver what's in the best interest of Queenslanders. As we've repeatedly said, we've brought in some of the strongest measures compared to any other state, that measures that the LNP opposed, and yet they stand up and talk about integrity. So I think the real questions actually need to be put to the Commonwealth right now, who said that they were going to put in place a federal ICAC, and now they're saying they're not going to do it. 3 years ago they said they were going to do it, and they still haven't done it.
With respect, though, there are no Commonwealth whistleblowers anymore coming out and making claims that Queensland public servants have been making.
And there are measures in place to be able to deal with those particular complaints. And as we've said, there are investigations underway or have already been investigated. So we have those robust systems that the Commonwealth does not have. Yeah.
I've just seen there's been a release of a report, it's called the Unleashing the Potential of Open, Equitable Health System report into COVID measures. Do you know anything about that?
No, I'm afraid I don't. No.
Okay, and my second question is, we understand that you were close to or had a relationship with the man who's
I don't have a relationship, but it is a terrible tragedy. I just can't imagine what his family must be going through at the moment. This young doctor had been working on the COVID ward of the Gold Coast University Hospital, and I think his family can be very proud of him.
Sounds to me like it's bad for
Yeah. An amazing young man. I understand he was very well liked by his colleagues, a very competent doctor, a real hero. Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously we're considering that uplisting. Of course, our sole priority is making sure we put in place measures to protect koalas. We have the strongest koala protections that Queensland has ever seen. We've protected over 300,000 hectares of land in southeast Queensland. It's now prohibited from development. There's also an additional 300,000 hectares that is prohibited restricted from development. We've put in place a range of measures, including things like rolling out vaccine trials for chlamydia, which we know is one of the leading causes of death in koalas and injury, and so we're also doing a whole lot of land restoration projects. What I think we need to ask from the Commonwealth is for them to respond to their own Samuels Review recommendations around strengthening environmental laws. You know, months ago, Graham Samuels handed down the review that looked into how we should strengthen federal laws in this country because he said that the state of environment was in decline. They still haven't responded to those. So I think that we need all levels of government to do everything we can to not only protect koalas, but all species across this state and country. Well, the national plan that I have seen is largely actions taken by the state governments, and as I said, I'd like to see from the Commonwealth their response to that review. I've asked for that previously and we still haven't seen it. I also have no clarity on the amount of money that they've announced, where that will be going and how it will be spent. So there's a whole lot of information Queensland needs to know before we sign up to an agreement that might actually not be in the best interest of our state. It might mean that New South Wales would get more money than we would. And I think, you know, it's my obligation as Queensland's Environment Minister that we make sure that koalas in this state get everything they can from all levels of government. Yes, we already are. We've got a post-implementation review process that's part of that measure. So we'll be looking at that and looking at what further measures need to be put in place. Look, I'm very hopeful that, of course, we can protect this incredible species. We know how much people love koalas, but they're also incredibly important in terms of being what we classify as an umbrella species that protects so many other species if we can protect their habitat. That's why we've brought in place things like the koala regulations, while we're doing land restoration projects, while we're rolling out vaccine trials. We're doing everything we can. Of course, if there's more we need to do, we'll look at that, but we're asking the Commonwealth to do the same. The population studies are generally done by the federal government. What the state governments do generally is look at the koala habitat protection, and so the part of the post-implementation review process, they'll be looking at all of that work, so I'll provide an update once we have that.
Some hospitality workers argue that the check-in process is becoming a bit difficult to keep up with and it isn't necessary anymore. Will that be reviewed under potentially review of easing restrictions?
Look, it's probably a matter for the Chief Health Officer, but I want to thank Queenslanders for their participation in doing the check-in. I think the new check-in app has been really easy. It's been, it's that single app that people can use. It takes, a couple of seconds to check in, and it just provides, previously it's provided Queensland Health with the data that they've needed, but also, provides those venues with the certification of your vaccine status. So, of course, we continue to review all of the COVID measures to make sure they're fit for purpose in the circumstances that we're in, but I want to thank Queenslanders and particularly the hospitality sector for their patience during what I know has been, a difficult time. To me or to the department? Yeah, I can't speak for the department, but I'm not aware of any complaints that have been made to me in particular relating to that. Excellent. Thank you.